Greetings. I'm Dr. Verdi Lethermon, and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. Most people call me Dr. V. This afternoon, I'd like to introduce you to the book, Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way, that it became a movement overnight. I want to tell you how that happens because books don't always become movements, but sometimes they do. So my book started when my children were very little, and I was trying to figure out how to raise them to be God-fearing, independent, kind, and loving adults. And the challenges and the obstacles that I faced were never ending. But I was committed that my children would learn who God is, and out of that, they would know who they were. So I started early, and I was persistent. And somewhere along the line, I ran into some bumps. No, not some bumps, many bumps. And I faced the challenges that eventually I realized were attacks of the enemy to destroy my children. The attacks weren't the same. The enemy was the same, but the outcome was success or failure depending on how I parented my children. So as time went by, I learned some things and I took some notes, and I began to figure out that this thing called parenting was much bigger than getting them to school, buying them some school supplies, feeding them. It was a war. And that if I didn't fight well, my children would lose. So as time went by, my husband and I were struggling with our children in different ways. And in frustration one night, I cried out to God and said, God, what is this all about? Why are we going through these challenges? And in that very familiar and very calming voice, God said to me, these experiences will become the chapters of your book. Final answer, end of conversation. And I didn't fully understand what he was telling me, but I knew that I needed to weather the storms and stay strong and follow his lead. So as time went on, we survived the ups and downs of parenting, and our children are more than we expected because God led us and shaped and molded them. So it did become a book. The title of the book is Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way. And it walks young people and the adults who love them through 5 levels comparable to the levels in video games. Actually, I compare life to video games in the way that you move from one level to the next as you learn lessons, as you overcome obstacles and enemies and challenges until you make it to the leaderboard. That's the same thing we do in life. Move from one stage of life to the next. We overcome, we learn, eventually advance to a level that feels successful to us, that we're comfortable with all that we went through to get to that level. And then we want to pass it on and teach others. Now here's where the rub comes. In my book, Surrender or Explode, I ask the question, if you're a video game player, and I know so many of you are, young and old. The question is, if you could collaborate with the expert who created the video game, who knows where all the traps and the challenges and the tools are, would you want to sit down and collaborate with that individual, or would you say, nah, I got this. I'm the boss of me. I don't need any help. That's an interesting question. And each of us has to ask that because in life, God is the expert. And he wants to collaborate with us and sit down and show us how to go from level 1 to level 5, from the beginner stage to the leaderboard, if we are willing to sit down and collaborate with him. So I wrote the book, and in the book are the chapters of the challenges and the victories that we experienced as parents as we were raising our children. And I want to generalize those lessons in our life and compare them to the lessons that young people and adults learn as they play video games, so that our young people are successful in life and are able to rise to the highest level that God created them to rise to for the plans and purposes that he has for them. The title of the book is Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way. You're on my YouTube channel. I have a Surrender or Explode website. And I also have a Facebook group for game changers who want to join me on this journey to teach and lead our young people to the highest levels they can achieve by playing the game of life God's way. So one of those upcoming events that I'm very excited about is my Surrender or Explode Super Sunday. And Super Sunday begins on November 20th. Now let me tell you why the start date for this Super Sunday is so important. It's one of the traditions that we had in our family when our children were growing up was that in celebration of the holiday season, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, we would give Jesus a gift. And the gift that we gave Jesus was we would each work on a character trait or a skill or some trait that we believe we could improve that would please God and Jesus, and that would be our gift, our Christmas gift to God and Jesus for the gift that Jesus is to us. So each of us would have to figure out, what are we going to work on? What are we going to improve? What are we going to minimize if it's something that we need to not do so much? And each of us would make that decision. And between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would work on improving, developing, or minimizing a specific trait. If I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I have to confess that one year it was suggested to me by one of my children that I might think about working on not yelling so much. Now, mind you, I didn't really think I yelled so much, but clearly one of my children did. And if I tell the whole truth, that child was right. And I did work on that trait because I did realize that there were times when I did yell too much. And so the idea behind the Super Sunday event is that leaders, whether they're parents or pastors or teachers or coaches or people in the neighborhood, people in organizations that serve children, serve youth, would come together and walk with our youth, whether they be high schoolers or young adults, and have them study my book, Surrender or Explode. Surrender or Explode is not a book just to be put in someone's hand and tell them to go read this. It's a book that needs to be studied with adult leadership so that the young people who read the book will dive deep, and that the adults who lead the study will remember who they were when they were young, and the things that they did or didn't learn, and the ways that their lives could have been more successful and could even be more successful now as they play the game of life God's way even better. So you don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a member of a church. You don't even have to be in Houston. You just have to want to be or see yourself as a game changer. And a game changer to me is anyone who wants to help our youth be successful as they climb the levels of life. Not about status quo. We're not about the things going on the way they've been going on forever and ever. No, we're about making things better. We're about changing. That's the definition of a movement. A movement disrupts where we are, what we have, the status quo, and it seeks to develop that into a more disruptive and energized and productive time or situation or circumstance or individual. So I'm looking for game changers who know the status quo is up. We've had enough. It's time to do some things differently because our youth are under attack. And if we're not willing to step up to the plate and teach them what God's word says about so many of the challenges and the deceptions and the contradictions and the flat out confusion that they feel in life, they won't be able to navigate it on their own. So I'm calling on the game changers who want to disrupt the status quo, make a difference, transform the lives of our youth into lives that God intended them to be for the assignments and purposes on their lives. So the Super Sunday event starts November 20th. It involves purchasing the books, organizing your youth into a 5-week continuous study, and reviewing the book and the material with them. Don't panic. You don't have to do it alone. I've got handouts, I've got instructions, I will have coaching sessions. Each week for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I will have sessions on my YouTube channel breaking down what I call the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are effective techniques for leading and teaching our youth. The 4 C's are simple. C number 1 is commitment. Commitment means by any means necessary. We won't take no for an answer. We're going to make it happen. We're going to help them get the results that we know they can get by any means necessary. But that takes commitment on the part of the adult teacher leaders. Number 2, credibility. So often we want our youth to listen to us and we want them to follow us, but we don't have any credibility with them. And we're then surprised when they ignore us or they don't pay attention or they don't model what they see or hear us doing or saying because we're not credible in their eyes. In order to be credible, you must be willing as an adult, as a leader, as a teacher, to be naked and unashamed. I'm going to break that down for you because I really want you to understand when you're working with youth, what does that look like? What does that mean? As a leader, to be naked and unashamed. No, I'm not saying go pull out your laundry list of all the mistakes you made and read them out to the youth in your lives one by one. I'm not saying that, but I am saying we can't forget what we did, the mistakes we made, and how we learn from those mistakes, and we likewise want them to avoid those mistakes and learn if and when they do. But we've got to be willing to be naked and credible and not hypocritical in the walk we walk compared to the talk we talk. Because that happens a lot too. That we're saying one thing, but we're doing something entirely different. And our young people see it, and our young people roll their eyes, even if they don't say anything, because they're thinking, how dare you think you can tell me? C number 3, collaboration. We're in this thing together. And so many times we are warring with each other. We are angry and rejecting and pushing each other away rather than collaborating. And whether that's generational collaboration or parent-child, parent-adolescent, young adult-parent collaboration, we're in this thing together. We can't do it alone. We weren't designed to do it alone, but we don't collaborate nearly as much as God would have us. And at the end of the day, we put distance between ourselves, and then we cannot benefit from the input and the support that the other would offer us. And then finally, the 4 C is choice. Everywhere, everyone, every place, everything. The Bible started with choice, it ends with choice. Our young people have choice. We can't make them, we shouldn't try to make them because God doesn't make us. He gave us free will intentionally. His purpose was to teach us through Jesus the things he would have us know so that we are better able to make choices that line up with his authority and line up with his word so that we are successful in life. And we must teach our youth, but then we must step back and take our hands off and allow them to choose. But here's the key. I can't teach what I don't know. I can't teach what I don't believe. And if I am struggling with my own beliefs, if I am struggling with the deception and the contradictions and the confusion that the culture presents to me, I'm going to be confused as I try to teach and lead. My book, Surrender or Explode, challenges adults and youth to study 4 primary topics. The first topic is, who are you? Simple question. Who are you? How do you answer that? Do you tell me your age? Do you tell me where you go to school? Do you tell me your marital status? What do you tell me when I ask the question, who are you? The answers are very diverse and they range from shallow and superficial to answers that suggest who I believe God has created and called me to be. Whew, that's a lot. But that's the first question. The second question is, who is God? How do you see God? How do you define God? What's your relationship with God? Who is God? What have you been taught? What do you believe? How do you interact based upon what you've been taught and what you believed? That's a huge question. He spells it out in the Bible, but we don't always get the full understanding of who he wants us to understand him to be. The next section of the book deals with who's your boss. Because even if you know who you are, and even if you know who God is, you still have to decide, but who's my boss? Who do I answer to? Who do I get my marching orders, my instructions from? Where do the rules come from? When I work at an organization, the organization lays out the rules for that organization. And I can get with it, or I can walk away because I don't like them. But each of us has to look within ourselves and ask ourselves, who is my boss? In the book, I give an example of if you are interviewing for a job and you go to the job interview and the interviewer has a bottle of beer and is in a swimming suit, dripping wet at the interview table, you might pause. You may wonder, does he or she represent the organization that I want to be a part of? Is he or she someone that I can respect and therefore translate that respect into the organization? Is this a person that I want to be my boss? Is this an organization that I want to be led by, to work under? Those are important questions, and each of us has to answer that for ourselves. But then the fourth part, and my favorite part, is what are the questions that you have that you should allow God to answer for you? Not the culture, not your parents, not your friends, not your teachers, not your coaches, but God, because those tend to be difficult, complicated, and sometimes very sensitive questions. One of the sections in the book talks about a young man whose brother died. He was confused. Why did his brother have to die? And he took that question to God because no one had been able to give him an answer that settled his spirit on why his brother died. And God shifted his focus. The question was not, why did he die? The question was, what are you going to do to honor his life and his legacy as his older brother now that he has died? And one of the things that the brother knew is that his younger brother had been complimented and remembered as an individual who loved other people deeply. And as it turns out, this person who was asking God the question was a police officer. And he often had the opportunity to not love, but arrest and put in handcuffs and fight and detain and control people. But he didn't as often have opportunities to love people. And he decided, based upon God's answer, that he was going to still be a police officer. He was going to still do his job to protect and serve, but he was also going to make an effort to love others as often as he could, no matter the opportunity that presented himself. Now, that didn't bring his brother back to life. That didn't take away his pain, but it gave him an opportunity to look at it, to change his perspective on his brother's death and turn that loss into an opportunity to honor a life. So those are the four major levels, aspects of the book that you will study. And I'm reaching out today to call on those who are game changers and want to make a difference to get involved, to purchase the books, to go on my website, surrenderorexplode.com, and tell me you want to join. You want to join the movement. You want to get involved. And I will give you directions on what the next steps are. But tune in to my channel again, because I'm going to go into more detail on the 4 C's, because I really want you to understand how to more effectively lead, teach youth. And I'm going to have some worksheets that accompany the books available on my website to be downloaded so that you can teach effectively by using the techniques and the material that I've already developed. I've already created it. You don't have to make it up, but I'm going to coach you. I'm going to walk with you. We're going to have brainstorming sessions. You're going to be able to ask me questions so that you will be prepared to do this study effectively. So stay tuned, follow me, like me, subscribe to my channel, and don't miss out on any of the material that will be available. Now, let me give you the dates. The Super Sunday, Surrender or Explode Super Sunday event begins on Sunday, November 20th, and it runs for 5 weeks. You can do it in the church, you can do it in your garage, you can do it in your living room, you can do it in the back of a restaurant. If you know someone who has a restaurant, and they'll let you bring some youth in and sit down and study. The study is designed for about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how much you want to teach and how deep you want to go. I will have materials available. You have to organize the youth, find the location, get the books, which are available on my website as well, and the book is available in an ebook form. So you can find all the information about all the material that are available by going to my website. Get on the Facebook group. The Facebook group is called Surrender or Explode Game Changers. Jump on the Facebook group, catch up, because I've had some material on there. We've already had a very successful parents-only group to get the parents ready to do the kinds of things that will help their studies in their own homes and neighborhoods be more effective. We had a powerful session. There's some question and answers on the Game Changer Facebook group, and you will hear some comments and remarks that I've made over the last few weeks talking about leading up to this period. So there's multiple ways to get in touch with me. Get in touch with me, but the most important first step is make the commitment. Identify yourself as a game changer. Say that you want to be involved. Make the commitment to make it happen. We're 30 days out. That's plenty of time to get your materials, review the materials, and get started. You are a game changer. You are leaders and teachers and coaches. You matter in the lives of our youth. Now it's time to step up, throw your name into the hat, and be counted. Because Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way, was only a book. But now it's a movement. And again, it's not just for pastors and churches, and it's not just for Houston, Texas. Share this information with anyone that you think is concerned about our youth, wants to disrupt the status quo and snatch them back from the enemy before it's too late. I cannot do this alone. I absolutely need and want your support and your participation, but I want you to do it from a place of commitment. By any means necessary is what Malcolm X taught us a long time ago. We will not save our youth if we do it casually, if we do it inconsistently, and if we do it ineffectively. So I've got a plan, I've got a blueprint, I've got a book, and we have a movement. So join me, let's get after it. I'm confident, I'm excited, because I made a commitment when my first child was born that the enemy would not steal her, would not snatch her. And with the holiday season approaching, what better modeling for us to do with our youth is to teach them that we can give a present to Jesus and God by being fully who He created and has called us to be. But we've got to learn some things. We've got to walk in some of the knowledge that we learn, and then we will level up from the beginner stage to the leaderboard, because life is just like a video game, and we can learn from the master and play it the way He designed it to be played, or we can explode in our own independent, personal, private ways. I want to surrender. I want to be led, because I want to level up every day of my life for the rest of my life. So I'm looking to hear from you. Check me out. Thank you for watching this video, and let's get after it.